forests just like these are under threat of deforestation. So it's really important that we do our best to help protect them by using the 3 R's. So reduce, reuse, and recycle. So that way we can protect these animals' homes. Kind of like our friend the okapi here to the right. Now, many people believe the okapi is related to the zebra because that similar striped pattern on their hind legs, but they're actually closely related to giraffes. They have a similar skull structure as well as something called a prehensile tongue, and prehensile means it can grasp or grab, kind of like the way our fingers or our hands do. Up here on the left, this is a bongo. Now, both male and female bongo will grow horns, and they grow in a backward spiral kind of fashion to help protect them from getting tangled up in the underbrush as they migrate. Down by the water here, a couple of saddle-billed storks. And when it comes to them, females are going to have yellow eyes and males are going to have brown eyes, so that's how you can tell the pairs apart. And speaking of the pairs, they do mate for life, which I think is very adorable. Saddle-billed storks have a pretty impressive wingspan of about 9 feet, which is about the width of those benches you're sitting on right now, just for some perspective. Spot a couple of pink-backed pelicans here. They get their names from the pink backs they get during the mating season, and they also have a wingspan of about 6 to 9 feet, but they are still the smallest of the pelican species. They are also colonial nesters, so they'll often nest in pairs of anywhere from 20 to 500.
The bumpy seats in the house.
Is it hang on tight to that?
Yeah, I know. I got a death grip on my phone.
Now it looks like we are coming up on a group of Nile crocodile. Their diets are mostly going to be fish, but they have been known to take down prey much larger than themselves. They grow up to 16 feet long and weigh up to 500 pounds, making them the largest species. Now, one of my favorite facts about the Nile crocodile is that their bodies are completely covered in these sensory pits. These pits are filled with nerves that are able to detect the tiniest movements in the water as well as changes to water pressure, so that they are effectively able to detect their prey as well as any potential threats. Now, as we leave the Safi River and head out to the heart of Africa, the savannah, I want you all to notice how our environment is going to drastically change. The savannah is going to be a lot more open. Now, just as we come down the overlook here, right over to the right, you might be able to spot some Hartman's Mountain zebras and a Maasai giraffe on the other side as well. Now, when it comes to the Hartman's Mountain zebras, or sorry, any type of species of zebra actually, their stripes are unique the way that our own fingerprints are, so no two sets of stripes will ever quite be the same. The Harkness Mountain zebras go on an annual migration. They'll go about 300 miles every year. They'll follow the rain in search of fresh grass. They're also very friendly and docile animals. They'll often migrate with other animals in the savannah, such as wildebeest, which there are some wildebeest up ahead we'll get a little bit closer to. But first, I do want to point out to the left here, a couple of painted dogs down by the back. Now, painted dogs are going to have unique patchwork in their fur, which helps them tell each other apart, even from great distances. And they are very adorable to be sure, but do not underestimate them. Painted dogs are actually the most successful mammal hunters in all of Africa. And this includes even big cats. They basically have a ton of stamina and they are able to outchase their prey. On the left, kind of in this back pocket there, you might be able to spot some dark brown antelopes. These are sable antelopes. They have these beautiful horns that go backwards towards their backs to protect them from any predators that might try to jump on top of them. When it comes to them, there's a dominant male that leads the group, but a dominant female that leads the group's movements, so they work together as a team. And then the wildebeest that I mentioned earlier, wildebeest in Afrikaans quite literally translates to wild beast. And they're some of those great migrators that I mentioned earlier. They'll actually travel in herds of about 1.5 million, and they will go anywhere from 500 to 1,000 miles. That prehensile tongue they have that they share with the okapi, and it's especially important for giraffes to be able to reach their tongues out of their mouths and grasp around those leaves at the very tippy tops of those trees. So because giraffes spend a lot of time on their days with their tongues outside their mouths eating, it's theorized that their tongues are a dark purple, dark bluish color to help protect it from getting sunburnt. And then up ahead here as well, there are some Ankole cattle, also called the Watusi cattle, after the Watusi tribe that first domesticated them. Also sometimes called Egyptian cattle because there are pictographs of these cattle in Egyptian pyramids that date about 6,000 years ago. Now these horns of theirs may look really massive and heavy, and they are pretty massive, but they're actually very light. They're made out of a honeycomb structure of arteries on the inside, which helps them circulate their blood flow to kind of regulate their body temperatures a bit and help cool themselves down. And it's especially important in those really intense African heats. Some more giraffes up ahead here.
Still on that tree.
They don't always hang out so close to the road.
Entering elephant territory here. We do see an African elephant. We'll be able to see them a little bit better as we kind of keep going around. But we know this is an African elephant, of course, because we're in Africa. But if you want to know how you can tell an African elephant apart from other types of elephants, other than that fact, if you take a look at their ear shapes, their ears are very large and kind of shaped like the continent of
Saw the
Africa.
monkey
So
again.
this is usually a pretty good indication.
Whoa.
I have to crane your neck just a little bit to see back there, but there they are.
Oh, there he is.
Now, elephants are unfortunately very heavily poached for those ivory tusks, but they also come into conflicts with humans because their habitats are very heavily mined for a metallic ore called coltan, which is used to make electronic devices. So it's really important that we do our best to help protect them, and we can do things as simple as recycling old electronics, as well as just making smarter, more conscious purchases for those things. The example I always like to give is how 10 or so years ago, a lot of people that I knew were really obsessed with getting the latest cell phone when it would come out, even if their current phone was still in perfect working condition. Now, I unfortunately was guilty of this from time to time too. I was pretty young and pretty influenced by societal peer pressures, but I always thought it was pretty wasteful. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older and more knowledgeable and passionate about wildlife and conservation, I started to really understand why it is that I felt that way. Now, thankfully, it's not as much of an issue these days. I think people are a lot more aware of their eco footprint, and there are a lot more resources out there for us today to recycle those old items, which is really great. But I do think it's important that we just take that extra step to do a little more research and really understand the impact of what we do, what we buy, and what we consume. Because it doesn't just affect them, it affects us too. Like there's a few more elephants up ahead.
Oh, I see him over there.
Now, elephants are, of course, massive creatures. They have to eat about 300 pounds of food per day, which I think is pretty impressive, considering that their diet is mostly going to be leaves, grass, hay, things like that. Things that are very, very light that have to accumulate to a much larger weight. Also coming up on our right, you'll kind of see this path, and on the other side, as we pass by, you'll be able to see these really tiny antelopes. These are springbok. Now, springbok get their name from their ability to spring about 6 feet in the air repeatedly when they get frightened. And they can also leap about 13 feet forward. Springbok are tiny, but they are powerful. They're actually in the top 10 fastest animals in the entire world. They can go about 50 to 60 miles per hour. And if you look over to the left, you might be able to spot a very tiny elephant. Looks like a baby elephant.
Oh, there he
In
is.
addition to the herd. It's a little hard to see with the shade there, but she's standing just under mom, it looks like. Now, as we come around this bend here, we're going to get a nice look at these rare flamingos. They are the largest of the flamingo species, but they're also the latest shade of pink. When they first hatch, they're actually kind of grayish. They don't really get that pink color until they're about 2 years old, and it comes from something called beta-carotene, which is in the brine shrimp that they eat. And if you see me out there standing on one leg, which flamingos are pretty notorious for doing, and wonder why exactly they do that, there's actually a couple of theories out there. One is that they have better balance on one leg than they do two, and the other is that it acts as a temperature regulator for them. Looks like we could be entering rhino territory here. I can tell because there's this giant mud wallow as we enter, and these mud wallows are perfect for rhinos because they have very sensitive skin. So they'll roll around in that mud, and that mud is actually going to act as a natural sunscreen as well as an insect repellent. So we'll keep our eyes peeled. Hopefully we'll see some rhinos up ahead.
There's an ostrich. When we see an animal, it's what you're talking about.
About as close as you get to safari here.
I know. Hey, there's a cheetah right there.
I believe I spot a cheetah here
Yep, right there.
to our left. She's kind of laying down just on top of this hill. A little tricky to see. She blends into that shade really well. Now, cheetahs are, of course, very fast. They can go about 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3 seconds time, making them the fastest land
Right there on the top of
top
the hill right there. She got her head lifting right at it.
Conserve their energy. Cheetahs are the only daytime hunters when it comes to big cats. Other big cats like to hunt at dusk and dawn. So because of this, cheetahs have a teardrop.
Oh, there's one right there against that fence.
Starts the inner corner of their eyes, and they go straight down their noses, kind of like a line. This line actually helps protect them from sun glare.
Cool.
I like to say it's like having natural sunglasses.
Lions out here.
Looks like I do see those rhinos here. Now these are white rhinos. They have a very flat, very wide upper lip. Their name in Afrikaans actually
Must be sleeping.
wide for that wide upper lip. But when it was first translated over to English, it was mistranslated and they thought it meant white, which is why they're called white rhinos. Over to the right as well, I also see some waterbuck, these kind of dark brown antelopes. Now, waterbuck get their name because they need a lot more water intake than other species of antelope, so they're never too far from any water source. And because of this, their coats will actually secrete an oil to make them a little more water resistant.
No lions out.
And over to the left, looks like there's a lion out and about.
Where? Oh, there he is.
Basking in this beautiful afternoon sun. Now, when it comes to lions, female lions are actually the ones that do the majority of the hunting. They work together in teams to take down their prey. And the males will stay back and protect the territory as well as the young.
Oh, there's
And
the
if they don't
female
have any
right
young
there.
to protect, then the males will go out and do hunting as well.
Down there.
It takes a lot of energy out of lions to do the hunting they need to do though, so lions typically sleep about 16 to 20 hours a day.
They are like 4 hours of being away.
One more beautiful look at the rhino over here to our right. Now, rhinos are unfortunately very heavily poached for those horns, partially for trophy and partially for something in them called keratin that many people believe has a medicinal value, but this is simply not true. Keratin is actually something we can find in our fingernails and our hair, so it's really unfortunate that they are poached as heavily as they are. Now, there are a few species of rhino that are native to Asia, and right now there are a lot of Asian communities that are trying to use social media influence to really educate people about the effects of poaching, which I think is very powerful because these animals unfortunately do not have a voice, so it's really important that we try to be a voice for them. Now, out here is where the warden's post is, and the warden and his staff take care of a group of Nigerian dwarf goats. They're very playful and social and of course adorable, but they're also really important for the locals because they can rely on the goat products rather than going out and hunting the wildlife or creating any farmlands that might destroy their habitats. This in turn is going to protect the animals as well as their homes, and it's just a great way to show how humans
Sitting
and
on top of the
animals can
Jeep.
truly live together in harmony. Now, unfortunately, that does conclude all the time that we have together out on the reserve. I hope that you all enjoyed yourselves very much and got to see some animals that you were excited about, and of course, learned something new today. If anything, please do remember that the animals you saw, as well as their habitats, are very vulnerable, so it's really important that we do our best to help protect them. We can do things as simple as recycling, especially those old electronic devices, like I mentioned earlier. It really does go a long way. There's also the Disney Conservation Fund, which you can donate directly to, or if you're planning on heading to a merchandise store here in the park, you can actually ask them to round up your purchase to the nearest dollar, and 100% of that roundup will go straight towards the Disney Conservation Fund, which Disney does match dollar for dollar, which is pretty wonderful. If you're looking for another way to help out directly here in the park, I highly recommend going over to Starbucks, aka Creature Comforts, ordering a flat white, especially if you need some caffeine. The proceeds from that purchase will actually go towards conservation efforts of a monkey called a cotton-top tamarin. They do have an enclosure right across from the Starbucks there, so if they are out and about, which they usually are, you can see them and just see exactly who you are supporting. If you're interested in seeing any more wild animals stay in the park, we do have 2 walking trails, one right next door, the Gorilla Falls Exploration Trail, and one over in Asia, the Maharaja Jungle Trek, which is kind of over behind Kali River Rapids. They're both self-guided, so you just walk right on and take as much time as you need, but on average, they're about 15 to 20-ish minutes each. Both trails are stroller, wheelchair, and ECV accessible. Alrighty friends, it looks like our journey is officially coming to an end here. So I want to say asante sana. Thank you so much for joining me today. We are not going to say goodbye, however, because goodbyes are far too sad and far too final. So instead I leave you all with a kwaherini, which means to go well. So friends, kwaherini, go well, go wild, go with kindness, go seek the next adventure, and never stop being curious. And if you're on the right, watch those legs, arms, hands, and feet as those doors open. If I have any wilderness explorers on board, you've been on the Simba 1.